I'm Scott Simi. On today's edition of our Soundbite micro podcast, I'm pleased to welcome InDro's training and regulatory specialist, Kate Klassen. Welcome, Kate.
Thanks, Scott. So happy to chat with you again.
Yeah, me too. Listen, before we hop into today's topic, I'd like to mention that Kate was recently on the cover of Canada's Wings magazine. It's a really great photo, and it's there for a great reason. And I'm not trying to embarrass you, Kate, but
Thanks.
Kate was recognized as one of the top 20 under 40 in the Canadian aviation sector. That's quite an honor, and I think it's really super well deserved. So congratulations, Kate.
Thank you, Scott. Yeah, it's not I don't do well with receiving praise, and getting the cover was quite the honor as well. A little bit embarrassing, but it did arrive in one of my old neighbors, like back in Nova Scotia, in their mailbox. So they got quite the surprise and sent me a nice little message about it. So that was pretty cool to hear.
Ah, very nice. All right, well, let's hop right into it. Today's topic is on beyond visual line of sight RPAS flight. And specifically, and not surprisingly, we're going to look at industries that will benefit the most from the coming changes to Transport Canada's regulations. Now, before we get into the specifics, Kate, maybe you could just briefly refresh us all on the routine low risk BVLOS change that's coming into effect this fall in Part 9 of CARS, the Canadian Aviation Regulations.
Yeah, absolutely. So, like you said, in the fall on November 4th, we are going to see the first revision to Part 9 since they were published in 2019 initially. And with that, there's going to be some general kind of tidying of things that were in there already. But the big stuff that everyone's really excited about is, like you mentioned, this new pilot certification, new organizational certification that enables routine low risk beyond visual line of sight. And so what that means, what those qualifiers at the beginning of the BVLOS describe, are kind of the bounds of where you can operate. So it does mean that you're flying beyond visual line of sight over areas of low population density. So depending on the aircraft certification and the weight of it determines how close to different population densities you can get, but it's going to be 25 people per square kilometer or less. And then the routine piece means that it's just embedded in the cars. We don't have to go through a special flight operations certificate every time that you want to fly beyond visual line of sight. So it is also an uncontrolled airspace, Class G airspace, and outside of aerodrome environments. So if the aerodrome shows up in the CFS, the Canadian Flight Supplement, or the Water Aerodrome Supplement, it means that you can't fly within 5 nautical miles of it. But that's actually quite a bit of Canada that it opens up to beyond visual line of sight. So there's some, like you said, industries that are really set to benefit from that.
So, based on what you've just described, we're not talking about Amazon packages arriving at your downtown condo quite yet. And kind of off the record, on the record, I actually hope that never happens. I mean, I'd support medical and or emergency supplies, EpiPens, naloxone being delivered in urban centers, but I really don't want to see drones dropping off bagels and coffee next door. Anyway, what type of applications do these regulations support?
Yeah, it's good. And I remember reading a stat somewhere that the number one use case for the Amazon's drone trials was actually diapers and wipes. So that was kind of reassuring that it's, maybe not quite at the same level as naloxone, but a still very important delivery and benefiting those who probably can't as easily just jump out and jump in the car and go get something. So that was kind of an interesting stat. I can
True.
definitely vibe with those parents that are struggling to find time to get out and get more diapers. But when we're looking at the types of applications that really thrive under this new regulatory structure, it's for those types where you can finally get the scalability for the drone work to make sense. So you can fly long range, you can cover large areas, you can operate where you can no longer see the drone, covering the full area of interest. Uh, and that is something where, having to position pilots or visual observers under the previous structure has made it so that, yeah, but in terms of logistics, it's just as easy to hire a traditional aircraft to do the work. So we're seeing that kind of switch flip in certain applications to move the some of these jobs outside of more traditional aviation methods or satellite-based imagery and bringing that into the RPAS sphere. And so we're going to see a lot of benefit from that because it's a lower cost, it's better quality data. You get that benefit of repeatability, and there's less human risk than what we saw in previous scenarios.
So based on these regs, it sounds like we're looking at industries that operate primarily in remote areas. Could you tell me more about some specific sectors in Canada that you think will benefit from what these new regulations will enable? Like what sort of impact do you foresee?
Yeah, I think Canada's really quite well primed to take advantage of this because we have a lot of remote areas, we have a lot of uncontrolled airspace. So for industries that really thrive in those spaces, like natural resources, mining, forestry, oil and gas, there's a ton of applications from mapping to emergency response, environmental monitoring, even using spray drones in tailings ponds to prevent vegetation growth so that birds don't want to nest in those areas and then be subject to all the things that the tailings ponds contain. Area Analytics is doing some great work with that application in the oil sands. Can also see it making sense for utilities for inspection of corridors or maybe accessing remote tower infrastructure that was previously requiring helicopter access only. You could do that more repeatably. You could get aircraft close enough and use really high quality zoom cameras to check on bolts and read meters so that you don't actually have to deploy someone on site. There's also lots of agriculture applications, whether that's using those spray drones or mapping with multispectral aircraft or multispectral sensors. And then there's tons more too. We could, expand on the work that the early adopters in public safety and emergency management were doing. There's opportunities in rail inspections and then delivery as well. Everyone's quite excited about that one, even if it isn't bagels. Those remote, kind of underserviced communities that previously rely on ice roads or air delivery of essential equipment for food and medical supplies. So now we have the regulations that are going to support those type of applications, and what we need is some detection technology to support that. And so you can jot me down to talk on that one in the future.
Okay. These use cases that you mentioned are great to help kind of envision what's possible and what's coming. I'm particularly interested in this because InDro is a partner on a pretty ambitious long-term project to ultimately deliver medical supplies to some remote indigenous communities in northern BC. And personally, I find this like a super exciting use case. What benefits do you foresee for low risk BVLOS flights on the healthcare side of things?
I'm so glad that you mentioned that one because I think it's those kind of drones for good use cases that are going to help build public acceptance and understanding of all of the positive capabilities and positive applications that RPAS and advanced air mobility, this like evolving aviation ecosystem, can bring. So it could be delivery of supplies, it could be blood samples or vaccines or specimens that require specific analysis or really specialized equipment. And you can send those things on the drone to come back to a more main medical center, enabling you to keep that healthcare provider in the community rather than having them accompany these sometimes delicate bits of cargo to that site themselves. So it gives them the ability to provide more consistent care and have more availability within the community rather than needing to take up their time doing these rather mundane and droneable things.
Such a fascinating topic. Big changes to come this fall. It'll be interesting to see, how rapidly the industry is ready to go. I'm sure there are some companies out there that are just absolutely ready to get out of the gate the moment that happens. Kate Klassen, InDro's regulatory and training specialist, as always, thank you so much for your time and expertise.
Yeah, thanks, Scott. It's going to be an exciting flying season in 2026, I think.
Awesome. See ya.
Bye.